Hi, boys and girls. I missed you. I'm going to start with a riddle. What do you call a bear with no teeth? And this riddle is thanks to Merrick. Now, I asked you to bring a stuffed animal or a stuffed toy that means something to you. I brought my teddy bear, stuffed bunny from when I was a baby. Now, it's been through a lot. You can see it has no eyes, no mouth, one ear is missing. You know how it had the ear missing? When I was a little girl, we used to have cows next door. And I used to go up to the fence and pet the cows through the fence. And one day I decided to show the cow my bunny. I thought, oh, the cow's my friend, he wants to see my bunny. I said, see my bunny? And the cow ate one of my bunny's ears. The cow was still my friend. I've kept it for a long time. He's an old bunny, and you'll see why I have this bunny when you see the story I'm reading. The story is called Bear and Fred. It's a World War II story. Now, this is a true story, and it's kind of a serious story. It's by Iris Argaman and illustrated by Avi Ofer, translated by Annette Appel. It was originally written in another language. Now, this is the history behind the book, in case you didn't know, and it also helps you understand the story. During World War II, the Nazi Party in Germany took over much of Europe and enforced a policy of hatred and persecution against the Jewish people. This led to the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews perished. Fred Lessing was growing up during the war, and it was a very dangerous time to be Jewish in Europe. The Nazis forced all of the Jews, even the children, to wear a yellow Star of David sewn onto their clothes. This badge made it easier for the Nazi forces to identify, segregate, and persecute the Jewish people throughout the war. In the Netherlands, the yellow Star of David had Jood, the Dutch word for Jew, in the center. Although this detail is not seen in the art of this book, Holland is a region of the Netherlands, but can also refer to the country. Bear and Fred, a World War II story. Now, Prologue is like a little story at the beginning. So, I am in a box all alone. It is dark. I am cold. Suddenly, I hear voices calling out, be gentle, careful, and the box opens up. I hear rustling and murmurs. Above me, someone is removing the layers and layers of wrapping paper. There's a burst of light. The golden sun sends its long rays to caress my fur. Now I feel nice and warm. The sun tickles my eyes. I open one eye, then another. I'm surrounded by so many people. A kind woman gathers me up in her arms and hugs me. Teardrops trickle down her face. A large man stands off to one side and says, I've been hauling that huge carton around in my truck for miles, and for what? Just a small and tattered teddy bear? First, everyone was so excited, and now they're all crying. What on earth is going on here? I don't understand what is going on either, the kind woman. The kind woman whispers to me, hello, Fred's bear. Welcome to Jerusalem. You are finally here. So, who is telling the story? And there's Fred's bear. Now he's in Jerusalem. So that's the prologue. Let's go back and hear the story. Many years ago, in a faraway land called Holland, in a city named Delft, I was Fred's teddy bear. I never had a name. Fred never gave me one. I lived in his bedroom with the other toys. I was a happy bear. Little Fred loved me more than any other toy. He took me everywhere he went. We did everything together. At night, when he snuggled under the blankets, I would sleep next to him on his pillow and dream alongside his dreams. So there's Fred next to all the other toys. You'll notice Fred has that special color. One winter day, Fred and I took a walk. He held me in his gloved hand, and I peeked out at the streets we always visited. But the streets were almost empty. Very few people were outside, and everyone looked sad. The painting or the illustration kind of tells a story. It's not a happy painting illustration. Suddenly, I heard fierce barking. A big black dog ran toward us. He almost bit Fred's little hand. But at the last minute, he sank his teeth into me. I was scared. His teeth were sharp and long, and he wouldn't let me go. The dog whipped me around with a shake of his head. Little Fred picked me up, brushed off my fur, and whispered, "My poor bear, don't be sad. I still love you, even if your head wobbles." Time had passed. I sat on a windowsill. A cold wind was blowing. Brown leaves swirled in the air. Then it started to rain. Fred told me that meant it was autumn. So here's where the dog bit Fred. Remember, Fred's the narrator. He's telling the story. Here he is looking out the window, kind of like my bunny. Now he only has one ear. Mama, Papa, Fred, and his brothers drank tea at the big table in the dining room. I heard the sipping and clink of teaspoons in their cups. No one spoke. Usually there was lots of laughter around the table. Papa would play his music for us. But that afternoon, things were different. There was a soft knock on the door. I felt that something bad was about to happen. Papa's friend came in and warned us that in a few minutes people would come and force us to leave our home. Then I heard lots of noise. Furniture moving, drawers opening, heels tapping, and voices talking. Mama said, "Children, we are leaving home. I don't know when we will return. Put on your coats. Pretend that we're going out for a walk." I was scared that Fred would leave me in the house. I wasn't used to being alone. Fred always kept me close by. The door opened and slammed shut. Silence. Fred had forgotten me. Then I heard the door open again. I felt Fred's small hand grab me. He patted me and whispered, "Bear, I won't leave you here all by yourself. You're my best friend." He put me into his knapsack, and I let out a sigh of relief. Fred did not forget me. I sat in Fred's knapsack. The knapsack swung back and forth. It was dark inside. I listened to the footsteps as they became louder and faster. After that, I heard knocking. Someone opened their door. I knew this voice. It was one of Papa's friends from the orchestra. From inside the knapsack, I could hear everyone sitting down to eat. And then Mama said, "We must find a hiding place. We can't let them find us." Why do we have to hide? What did we do? When everyone had gone to bed, Fred took me out of the knapsack and held me close. He couldn't fall asleep. He tossed and turned, squashing me a little bit each time he rolled over. A long time passed until finally he hugged me tight and I fell asleep. "Fred, we're going to Amsterdam," Mama said. Fred threw me up in the air. "We're going to see Grandpa?" Then Mama said, "Fred, only you will stay with Grandpa. It's too dangerous for all of us to hide there together." Fred stopped throwing me in the air. I saw how sad he looked. "Don't be sad, it will only be for a short time." "Then we'll all be together again," said Mama. Fred and I loved Grandpa. He always played with us, and we had lots of fun together. I also liked walking down the busy streets of Amsterdam, and I remember going to the nearby park that had a lake with ducks. We took the train north, Mama, Fred, and I. Mama told Fred not to speak, but he whispered, "Don't worry." He set me on his lap so I could look out the window. I watched the houses rush past. I looked at the bright blue sky with specks of clouds, gray and white, and many other bursts of color that all blended one into another. In the end, I fell asleep. I awoke to the sound of a loud horn. We were there. Grandpa opened the door and rushed us inside. After a few minutes, Mama said, "Fred, I have to leave. I have to hide too. Right now, you have to take care of yourself. Never tell anyone where you are from or who you are. You must keep this a secret." "I promise I'll be back soon." I didn't understand. Why did Fred have to keep secrets about himself? Why couldn't he tell anyone who he was? Did he do something bad? Fred held me very tightly, clutching me between his hands. A tear rolled down his cheek and dampened my fur. "My Fred, don't be sad. Everything will work out in the end," whispered Mama. Then she asked, "Is there anything I can do for you before I leave?" "Yes," said Fred. "I want you to fix Bear's head. It wobbles and I'm afraid it will fall off." Mama cut out pieces of materials from the inner pockets of Fred's gray coat and sewed me a new head. Then she connected it to my little body and used red thread to embroider my eyes, nose, and mouth. I almost looked like a regular teddy bear again. Fred was happy. After Mama left, Fred and I stood in front of the large mirror. I saw my reflection and it frightened me. My head was grayish-brown and my body was brown. I thought I looked strange. Fred put me down in the corner of the room and I barely played with me after that. I was sad. Once he even forgot me on the windowsill. I looked outside and saw the entire street covered in white. One morning I woke up. I saw Grandpa sewing a yellow star on Fred's gray coat. When we went out to play in the snow, Fred built a snowman with his friends and put me on the snowman's head. Everyone laughed. As the children played, I noticed that almost all of them wore yellow stars, just like Fred's. One day, Mama showed up. She was angry at Grandpa. "Why did you sew a yellow star onto his clothes? It's dangerous." "It's more dangerous without the star," Grandpa answered. I looked at Grandpa and saw that he was worried. "We are leaving Grandpa's house," Mama said, and then she ripped the yellow star off Fred's coat. Fred cried, "I want to stay here. I don't want to leave either." I didn't. I was afraid that Fred would forget me, but he gathered up his hat, gloves, his notebooks, and colored pencils, and then he stuffed me into his knapsack too. That made me very happy, even though it was crowded inside. It was dark and uncomfortable, but I was too scared to notice. Mama said that we were going somewhere else, but she didn't say where. My head was full of thoughts and questions. We walked for a long time. I pressed my ear against the knapsack and tried to listen to what was going on outside. I only heard footsteps. Suddenly, a door creaked open. Mama said, "Hello, we are family from the south. Our house flooded after the dam nearby was blown up. My husband is very ill and I have to look for a new home. Can my son stay here with you until we get settled?" I couldn't understand why Mama made up that lie. "Oh, come in," answered a woman. I didn't recognize her voice. Fred pulled me out of the knapsack and sat me down on his lap. We didn't move for a long time. Mama and the woman spoke quietly in the corner of the room. Finally, Mama came over to Fred and said, "My boy, I'm going now. And you're going to stay with this nice lady." "Mama, I don't want to stay alone." "Why are you leaving me with strangers? I'm scared." "My Fred, it's hard for me to leave you, but I don't have a choice. I promise you that I will be back. And you are not alone. You have Bear." At that moment, I understood. I had to take care of Fred. Fred and I stood by the window and waved goodbye to Mama until her figure became a small dot and finally disappeared. From then on, Fred never left me. I usually sat in his pants pocket or the inner pocket of his coat. We never left the house. We hardly even peeked out the street through the corner of the window. If I knew how to talk, I would have asked Fred to take me outside for a walk. I didn't like being closed up inside the house. Kind of feels like us today. One day a boy came over. He looked close to Fred's age. They built a tower out of blocks and played with little tin soldiers. I heard them laughing. When the boy asked Fred, "Where are you from? Where are your parents? Why are you here all by yourself?" Fred remained silent. I knew that he was keeping the secret. Every night, Fred would whisper to me that he missed Papa, Mama, and his brothers, that it was sad being all alone, that the world was a scary place, and that he was lucky to have me because I was his best friend. Fred whispered these things, and as he spoke, he took my paw and stroked his face with it. Sometimes small, hot tears rolled down Fred's cheeks, and I wiped them away. The winter passed. The gray clouds floated off to other places, and all the trees had turned green. One day I heard shouts of joy. "The war is over! The war is over!" Fred picked me up off the rug, hugged me, and whispered, "My bear, soon Mama and Papa will come and get us." "Don't worry, they didn't forget us." One night the door opened, and into the house stepped Mama and Papa. We were all so happy. Fred laughed and cried and hugged them so tightly. He gathered all his belongings and packed them in his knapsack. This time he held on to me with one hand as we left. We traveled to a small village. There we joined Fred's brothers. We became a family again. We took walks for hours and hours in the forest and the fields. Fred picked leaves and flowers, and sometimes we'd climb a tree and sit on a branch way up high. I loved sitting there listening to the birds sing, watching the sun play with the leaves, and looking out the horizon. Fred would tell me stories about faraway lands, castles, and knights. He also told me the world wasn't such a scary place anymore. Look at how the picture has a little more color, but look at even the background. The leftovers of war, the bad stuff. Now, at the end of this book, there's something called an epilogue, and it tells what happened to Fred and Bear after the war. When the war ended, we left Holland and moved to America. Fred grew up. He got married and had 2 children of his own, but he never abandoned me. One day, a woman called Fred and said, "Hello, Fred, my name is Yehudit. I live in Israel, and I work with the Yad Vashem Museum. I heard about the story of your bear, and it really touched my heart. Would you agree to lend your bear to our museum in Jerusalem so that children can learn about your story?" Fred answered, "Bear and I have never been separated. We've always been together, but I will ask him." Fred held me in both of his hands and said, "Bear, we've been together for as long as I can remember. You are my very best friend. You watched over me in hard times. Are you willing to go?" I agreed. And that is how the epilogue came. So they sent Bear away, and the museum had him, and that's why it was so special when they opened the box to see Fred. I'm sorry, that part makes me tear up a little bit. So, now, here's a note from Fred's bear to the children. "Dear children, a little while ago, I told Fred that I would write a letter to you, and this is what he answered. Hi, Bear. Don't forget to tell the children to give their own teddy bears a big hug, because no one knows when they'll need true and unconditional love, like the love we share between us. You know that's still love. You right? You know that I still love you, right?" So that's from Bear. "I told Fred that I'd pass this message on to you, and I'm sure you know what he means. I made sure to tell him that I still love him too. He's my oldest and dearest friend." Fred and I had lots of adventures together. Some were happy, others were scary and not nice at all. Fred always told me he was glad I was there with him, making sure he never felt alone. That made me feel important and loved. I was lucky because Fred chose me to be his bear. During those times, a long time ago, Fred often felt anxious and frightened. He always wanted me by his side. From the minute we met, Fred always protected me, took care of me, and loved me. He always kept me safe from harm, even during our most difficult days. Many years have passed. We've stayed good friends. We grew up, but even when we are apart, we talk often, mostly about our feelings. We have very strong and special connection. One knows exactly what the other thinks, as if we were one person. You know what? Maybe we are the same. Maybe we always were. I hope that you too, dear children, find a wonderful friendship like the one I share with Fred. Forever yours, Fred's bear. Still makes me tear up. Now, do you want to know why the author wrote this book? There's a note here from the author that says why. One day I was reading the newspaper and came across an article about an exhibition at the Yad Vashem Museum. No child's play. In the article, the curator, Yedut Inbar, wrote about a very special teddy bear that she had nicknamed the Mona Lisa of Yad Vashem. I read and reread the article. I knew that I was going to write the story of that teddy bear. I called the curator and she told me that the teddy bear belongs to Fred Lessing, who lives in America. She said that I would have to ask his permission to write the story. So I wrote Fred about how his story touched my heart too, and how I wanted to write a book to tell a story. Fred said that it was hard for him to agree because I may call it a story for him. It was for his life. Fred said he'd think about it for a while. In the end, a detailed letter, he agreed to my request. On a rainy winter day, I traveled to Yad Vashem to meet Bear. Heavy clouds filled the sky and rain beat down on the pavement. By the time I reached the hall, which Bear was on display, I was wet and shivering. The meeting was very emotional. I stood the opposite of the little teddy bear, who was standing all alone in a glass box and couldn't move an inch. I whispered the words only he could hear. I told him that Fred said hello, and I was going to write a story so children would know what an amazing and special bear he was. When I left the museum, the sky was still gray, and it was still pouring, but I walked boldly and exited my meeting with Fred's teddy bear. I began a journey in which I studied and researched the life of Fred Lessing, read about the war, dove into the soul of the teddy bear, wrote and erased, sent letters to Fred Lessing, and waited for his letters in return. The journey was long and exhausting and full of discoveries. It was a journey in which I imagined the character of Bear on the way discovered Fred Lessing, the man. Iris Argaman. And that is from the author. Kind of interesting to know why she wanted to write this book. And now it tells you, because sometimes I ask you, why did the author write this book? Kind of an emotional book, but a very good story. Now, the answer to the riddle. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. Thanks, Merrick. I miss you. I love you. And I'm going to be doing in a different video some gummy bear science, so get ready.